Hello, Art Bubble!
My name is Tony Moy. I'm a watercolorist and a comic book artist, and I've worked on a variety of projects from the X-Files to Dungeons and Dragons. I've worked on a project called Mainstream with Zenoscope. A few side projects here and there, some covers, variant covers and things like that. And my current project is a webcomic called The 442nd, about the Japanese Americans who fought in World War II. They became the most decorated battalion in U.S. military history, over 14,000 soldiers earning over 18,000 medals. And they are a battalion and a piece of history that not many people know about. So I'm putting that project out there and making sure I remove as many hurdles to get to that information as I possibly can. At some point in the future, it'll become a graphic novel, but there's still a long ways to go with that project. I guess when in terms of sort of pop culture and comics and watercolor, you can't be involved in that space without saying that you weren't influenced in some ways by the likes of David Mack, of Bill Sienkiewicz, of Alex Ross. Even though his is gouache, it's still that sort of painterly feel. And there are aspects to all three of those amazing artists that I feel that I've incorporated into my own. They say your style is an amalgamation of the influences that affected you. And so they are definitely influences on me. From Mac, from David, it's a lot of letting the watercolor be free to be watercolor, right? I have a penchant to over render, I feel, and that part is definitely from Alex Ross, so to speak, or just from my penciling and inking days, where I feel like the need to really be precise about the figures and the characters in the piece that I'm doing. And Sienkiewicz, his work just kind of lets me be a little more open to experimenting, to deal with splashes and splatters and chemicals and alcohol washes and everything else like that. They can still have fun and be loose and fluid and precise at the same time. After playing with watercolor, after painting for a while, one of the things I've also done is just kind of go back into history and look at some of the really classic watercolorists like Turner, Winslow Homer, Sargent. Like I have books on them, and there are times when I just kind of go back and look at the palettes that they created, how they used light and simple washes and things like that. So as far as influences in watercolor, I would say those are definitely some of my bigger ones. Obviously, when it comes to illustration and penciling and comic books itself, there are just so many. So everything I see on Instagram, everything I see on social media is pretty much becomes a little bit of an influence. My process for comics, or my process for painting, I should say, is one that tries to minimize the amount of effort and mistakes that you're putting in, right? The last thing you want to do is to spend 8 hours on a piece and then make a mistake or do something that you didn't intend to do and kind of ruins the whole piece. This is only exacerbated when it comes to watercolor, because watercolor is, in a sense, immutable. Like, you can't erase it. You can't paint over it because it is transparent. So every glaze, every layer that you put on is affected by all the other previous layers that went before, unlike acrylics or oils or things like that, where you can cover it up, right? It's a medium that you have to have some sort of confidence in. And so a lot of my early steps, I work very, I use a lot of water. I work very lightly. I try to plan it all in the thumbnail stage, or if I need to, some of my pieces actually do a digital mock-up. Doesn't take too long, but I explore some colors that I want to play around with. I do some sketches that have, all my values in there in black and white or grayscale before I ever actually explore the colors. And the one thing I really do believe, and it's one of the rules in art, is that value matters more than color. So as long as you get your values correct, you can play around and have a lot more leeway with exploring with colors and things like that. So that is basically my approach. I have less of a formulaic approach to every single piece. Some pieces I start in the background, some people say pieces I start on the figure, some I start with the shadows, some I focus on the light. But regardless of it, it all starts at a very watered down and with a series of light washes until I get to a point that I feel confident in where it's going. In the beginning, I was just like anyone else, I guess, that gets into comics. You get into it because you really like drawing. I was drawing all the time. I got into pen and ink work, and honestly, always thought black and white would be the limits of my artistic skill. I never really thought that I would be able to understand colors as well as I do, and I think I just put a limit on myself because I just told myself that I was always that type of artist that would see the world in black and white. And there was a personally sort of tumultuous year. I ended up going into a lot of sort of a personal art therapy. I ended up exploring a wide variety of mediums, from oils to acrylics, Copic markers, digital art, and everything else like that. And it was honestly the last sort of medium that I decided to try was watercolor. And it was because of my friend Ben Templesmith. I saw him playing around with some watercolor, splashing it around on top of his pen and ink work. And I thought it looked easy. Nothing ever looks as easy as it seems, but that's kind of how I got into it. And what I tell people is the best thing I can say about it is that I just, going through the process of learning watercolors, it just made me not want to quit, not want to quit painting and not want to quit exploring and trying. I felt like I was always right on the cusp of figuring it out and solving it, right? And even today when I'm working on some of my more elaborate pieces that people say I'm kind of known for now, it's not that I have a full idea of what it's going to be like. It's just me trying to figure it out and seeing how far I can push it. The comic book part, I'm a nerd at heart, and I love everything that comes with it. So it just made sense to explore watercolors through the medium of comics. The best advice I can give is to kind of put yourself out there, and it's a tough thing to kind of be an artist nowadays, because you get told to kind of go into the corner, practice your craft, whether it's on digital or pencil or paper or whatever else, and you spend all this time in a solitary stupor, learning and practicing and perfecting, right? And then when you put it out there, it becomes, you're told not to take it personally, right? But you've put all this personal time into it. So it's really a catch-22 in many ways to kind of put yourself out there as an artist. But definitely that is something that for me has been really helpful, is just kind of take the chances, not just putting your art out there before you're ready, because you'll never be ready, right? And that's one of the things. You will never fully feel like you are ready. And by the time you need to kind of be out there and put yourself out there, it's already too late. So you kind of have to do it before you feel like you're ready to kind of put yourself out into the world. So that's one. And I guess another point of advice, if you will, would be to not worry about finding your style. I see so many artists that are trying, like, oh, this is my style. This is what I want to emulate. And emulating's fine. Copying artists that inspire you is great. But at the same time, you have to be authentic. There's just so many artists out there, and you have to find your own way. And don't let the confines of style don't let the confines of style sort of hinder your growth, right? Paint and draw on all the styles. Learn how to paint portraits and learn how to draw in pen and ink, and take all of those elements and use those and fuse those into a medium or a piece of art that is yours and what you like to do. Don't think too much about what others want you to do or want you to be, right? So get there first, and then we can think about, how do you market yourself? That's a whole nother question.
My name is Tony Moy. I'm a watercolorist and a comic book artist. My current project is a project that spoke to me very fervently, and it's about the 442nd, the Japanese Americans that fought during World War II. 442nd is an online webcomic that will be released on Webtoons and Tapas.io, and I am weaving a story surrounding the actual history around the 442nd, the Japanese Americans that fought during World War II. Over 14,000 Japanese Americans went through the 442nd Battalion, earning over 18,000 medals, that making them one of the most decorated battalions in all of U.S. military history. In the beginning of 2021, there was a lot of Asian American news that was in the media. And I was doing a series of portraits. That's how I decided to do a series of Asian American portraits that have influenced us to kind of, say something about what was going on with all the Asian American violence. And I watched this documentary about Asian American history. And when it got to World War II, I knew it was going to talk about the internment camps. That was something I was familiar with, But they said about 20 seconds worth about the 442nd. About them being the most decorated battalion in all military history. And I was like, wait, what? And then they moved on to the next topic. Couldn't believe I never heard of them. I knew nothing about them, but I knew I had to research, and I fell down this rabbit hole reading everything as voraciously as I could. And knowing that the story wasn't out there as much as I thought it should be, I felt that with my skills and my talents and everything else, I really felt the need to put it out there for the new generation in a format that was accessible. So it'll be released for free on Webtoons. Come check it out. It's a traditional watercolor. It's a little different than every other webcomic that's going to be out there.
So my name is Keramidas Nicola, and you're all watching at Art Bubble TV.